and I will share. What did I share here? Sharing the screen. Could someone validate, please? What am I sharing? Am I sharing the?
I see your desktop.
My desk. What exactly are you seeing? Are you seeing?
Seeing all your programs down at the bottom, and then
that's not what I'm supposed to be sharing. Sharing. How about I share this? Is it a website or?
It's the WordPress admin. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So that's fine. I should need to share my slide from the beginning. And now you got the slide deck, correct?
Yep.
Excellent. Okay, so apologies for the delay. Good morning, good day, good evening, everyone, depending from what part of the world you're joining. This is one of the series of large-scale Scrum of New York City meetup virtual event. Today, I'm actually going to host myself, and we'll share with everyone some thoughts that came across my mind, but obviously were not collected in a silo. They were based on some of the feedback I got from some of the folks asking to raise this topic and discuss it and maybe expand it. And so here it comes. The topic is some of the COVID-related opportunities and risks that in the space of hiring, compensation, and candidates quality. Okay, so I am probably going to be very, agnostic of what angle you would like to come from, whether it's from the angle of someone who is looking for opportunities or have looked for opportunities in the past, or maybe someone who is involved in procuring talent, or maybe from the angle of someone who is neither, but has some influence on either one of the above. So, and this is more of a open discussion. I'm going to prime the pump a little bit with, using some of the techniques. They're called system modeling techniques to expand our horizon, expand our understanding of organizational dynamics, and then maybe we'll open up for questions or for just a live chat. So before I do that, let me do a couple of things first. Just so everyone should probably know, if you have any questions, you can always easily reach me. LinkedIn, website, email, also Slack channel. I have a free Slack channel you can join. Also, some virtual training if someone is interested maybe in your network, you can always share this. And before I forget, so this great book has been released. I think the official release date was August 1st. It was launched. It was soft launched. It's called Best Agile Articles of 2019. It's this series. Every year there's a group of people. There was a committee that collects hundreds and selects dozens of articles and publications, and they go through a very thorough review. So it's just a collection. It's a free copy. You can, let me just quickly go to my own site. See, I have it downloaded here. You can get a free copy down below by clicking free PDF, or if you wish to read on Kindle, some people, someone whoever makes money, it's the publication company that does, you can just download it from here. There's also 17 and 18, the best agile articles of 17 and 18, if you wish, those as well. Okay. So going back to what I was saying just a minute ago, this conversation is really geared towards professional workers, people that actually in business of delivering work, the actual, the Gemba people that are working in Gemba, also hiring companies and managers. So someone may potentially represent a company that looks for talent, or people that have some influence on one of the above or both of the above. Okay, so it's going to be a pretty dry conversation because unlike previous ones, there are very few slides. This one actually is going to have only one slide because it's a lot. And, we shall go through some of the steps of the model. Okay, And I apologize. I would have to mute you guys just to make sure there's no background sound. Or just keep yourself muted if you don't mind. So let me, before you get overwhelmed and before you start reading everything, let me just give you a bit of a sneak peek what this is. This is what's called the CLD, Causal Loop Diagram. It's the pretty powerful, pretty cheap. You know, it's cheap because it doesn't cost you a penny. Actually free. It's the tool that you can use to expand your understanding of the underlying dynamics of a system. And it's best, of course, if you work together with a colleague or a group of individuals, whether you are your coachees or mentees or mentors. And by expanding the system and working very different angles, you understand it. You understand it better. These boxes actually are referred to as system variables. Errors are referred to as relationships, and some of these annotations I'm going to explain. In fact, I'm going to step over to the next slide, and we'll just give you a bit of a legend, so it's easy. It should take like maybe a minute for us to digest it. These big boxes are variables. These are system elements that have an effect or influence on other system elements. The arrows actually causal links, upstream, downstream dependencies. We don't so much care about correlations. Hey, sun is shining and the stock market is open. This is really a correlation. There is really no cause and effect. We care about causations. Hey, there's a sun is shining, a rain is coming down, and we have the tulip or the flower is flourishing. That's a causation. So we care about causations. If you see a little O when I use an arrow and I put an O on it, it means an opposite effect. Something goes up, something else goes down. If you don't see an O, it means a direct effect. This goes up and this goes up. There's something that's called the delayed effect. I don't think I used it in this case. Two pipes, meaning something happens and with some delay, there was something else that takes place. So it's almost like sun is shining, but you don't immediately have a tulip flourishing, a blossoming. It may take a couple of weeks. Extreme effects are typically shown by thick arrows. It's almost like you're using a dry marker and really making it very thick, very fat. C stands for constraint. A causes B, but there is something else that is causing this transition to slow down, for example, or hinder it. And there's something that's called QF, quick fix. I don't want to overwhelm you with the annotation that I haven't actually used, but you may see, hey, QF stands for quick fix. Or a simple example would be, you don't have, let's just say sun isn't shining and rain isn't coming down. What do you do to quickly fix the problem so that your flower is actually blossoming? Well, you're gonna pour water and you're gonna maybe shine artificial UV light. Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to mute you. So with that in mind, let's go back to the actual diagram and understand what we're trying to say here. When we look at the causal loop diagram, it's typically, there's really no best place to start. You can pretty much start anywhere. And oftentimes, we teach it in large-scale Scrum plenty because it's an organizational design tool, organizational design model. And we often get a question, where do you start? I mean, the typical answer is, it depends. If you can just start with one simple variable and start working it outward, or you just do a data dump a bunch of variables all together on the canvas, and then try to put them in the relationship. So you can choose either. And of course, if you work in a group of people, then your dialect will be just so much richer. Let me start with a system optimizing goal here. So the goal here is to hire great and cheap talent. And I put a smiley face here because there was a bit of irony to this, right? There was an expression, people that look for, people that look for very cheap things end up buying them twice or three times. Same thing goes for individual assets. In fact, intellectual assets. In fact, I don't like calling people human resources, although you may hear this from time to time, and some companies are still using this legacy term. So let's start with this system optimizing goal, hiring great and cheap talent. Now, I'm going to put my first variable here. And of course, this is all going to be very debatable, very conditional, very circumstantial, based in your organizational settings, based in your geographic settings and your personal beliefs. but this is mine. So a company's internal capability to look for talent. If there is no such capability, if there is no capability exists, or if there is a low capability, there will be reliance on quick and dirty hiring by staffing agencies. I am not going to take you through the entire flow this way. I'm just going to make this, I'm just going to pause here. You see an O here. It's an opposite of. It means the higher internal capability of a company, the less probability there will be reliance on quick and dirty hiring methods. Now, this capability comes in two forms. It may come in the form of bandwidth and capacity, and actual capability as a skill set itself. You may have a few great people internally that are able to find other great candidates, but they're just not, there's not sufficient time and effort. There's not sufficient capacity these people can give for this effort. And the opposite is true too. Sometimes a company may not have any expertise whatsoever to do their internal hiring, and they completely outsource it. Let me take this other thick variable meaning the strong variable, because that's my belief. It's a pretty strong variable. I put it in thick frame. Shifting towards and predominance of virtual work. Now, we all live on the COVID conditions now, and you may argue this is a very strong factor here. In fact, so there's a probability that things may go back to normal post-COVID. And if this is true, then it may have the opposite effect on shifting towards and predominance of virtual work. This is how you should read. If we go back to normal, if we go back to the office, if we go back to our physical locations, there is a chance that there will be less reliance on virtual work. There will be still reliance on virtual work, but not as. Guys, can you mute yourself unless you're speaking? I end up muting quite a few people. So with this variable in mind, we need to think of something else downstream. If this shift is going to happen, and if this is a strong variable, then limitation to local market only when looking for talent is going to go down. O stands for an opposite. So as you're shifting towards 100% virtual work, then you are less limited, less hindered, less bound, just the local market of professionals, of individuals. You may think it's a great thing. You know, at least if you're coming from the angle of a hiring company, you may think, oh, that's great. The sky is the limit. The horizon has been expanded for us. So maybe so. We're not sure yet. We are hypothesizing here. Now, here is another variable: market saturation with people available to do work. We sometimes refer to it as a buyer's market. If you're in real estate, it's called a buyer's market. Now, when you have limitation to local market only, then it's going to have an opposite effect on market saturation. But since this is not a problem, market is really becoming saturated with people that are available to work. So that's why we call it buyer's market, because now it creates an advantage of those that are buying people. Buying meaning procuring, being hiring. Those are the companies that look for people. Now, the next one down is increased pool of virtual candidates or workers to choose from. Now, that kind of goes directly hand to hand, right? This would lead to this. Now, from here, I'm making another argument. Likelihood that a company will be tempted to look for cheaper workers is higher, right? If you think about it, the more people you have, they're all virtual, they're available to you. There's almost like a, there was a temptation. There was a strong drive, strong temptation for an organization, for a company to look for people that are just cheaper cost. Now, candidates' cost of living would have a constraining effect here. So, in fact, actually, I need to change this slightly. The annotation is here a little bit off. This isn't this is a C. Okay, candidates' cost of living. So effectively, another way of saying is this: just because there's a virtual increased pool of candidates and companies are really, really looking for it, they're very tempted to get cheaper talent. It doesn't mean that they can drive this to zero. The pricing is not going to drive to zero. There are some limiting factors. From here, we can also derive something else: likelihood that a company will select a great candidate. Now, this variable by itself, if we take it at its face value, you have an increased pool of candidates. So you're not constrained just to one, physical location, one geography, one zip code, one state, or one city. You can get great talent from anywhere. So you may the immediate knee-jerk reaction thinking, and that's actually an accurate way to think. The simple way of thinking: hey, sky's the limit. We can go anywhere. We can almost hire anyone under the sun. So likelihood will increase, will go up. However, there is a constraining force on this. Quality of screening and hiring process is going to create a constraint. What does it mean? It means if it is weak, if quality is low, and maybe I should expand this by saying low. This is what we do on the fly. Low quality of screening and hiring process will create a constraint. So just because you have lots of people available does not mean you're going to be able, you're going to succeed in hiring the best of the best of the best. Now, I'm also making an argument here, and you could argue back, that reliance on quick and dirty hiring by staffing agencies, and of course there are exceptions of good organizations, good companies that really have expertise in domain that we're hiring for. But the vast majority of staffing business, and I'm sure maybe it sounds a little skeptical to some of you, is actually drives quality down. So this will have the opposite effect on quality of screening and hiring. Okay, so where are we at now? So we actually talked about this, right? We talked about reliance on quick and dirty hiring by staffing agencies. Companies' internal capability to look for talent will actually put it in the opposite direction. Will make it less contingent upon, will make a company less contingent upon these kind of agencies, these kind of companies, but risk and probability still exists. In general, likelihood that there will be a lot of hiring is going to increase reliance on this element. If you just need lots of people and a company is overwhelmed with these needs, then they tend to outsource this mundane manual labor. And there's always an argument: hey, we're not really giving this all up to those staffing agencies. We actually are going to do our own vetting, because we're using them as the frontier, as a front line. They're going to bring talent to us, and we're going to decide. Truth be told, if there is no proper filter, if there's no good boundary at this juncture, at this level, the volume of less less reputable and not of high and individuals of less quality will be just very high. It's going to be an influx. So what does it really mean? You're being flooded with not such good candidates, not such good resumes, and you as a company, of course, spending your own energy and effort on going through these low quality candidates, because the upstream filter was pretty weak. What else I wanted to stress here? The overall unemployment rate has an impact. So first, it is going to have a constraint on this relationship. Likelihood that there will be a lot of hiring and reliance. So if there was a lot of hiring, there was going to be a lot of reliance on, quick and dirty hiring staffing agencies. So this is a constraint. So it's almost like a natural defense, systemic defense. We don't want an unemployment rate to be high. We actually want it to be very low. But when it becomes high, it becomes a natural constraint. Okay. Here's another one. This is probably not a very popular to discuss, but this is probably something that we need to understand. And again, depending on what angle you're coming from, again, this is just food for thought. You may say, well, this is actually not true. Or you may say this is, hits the nail on the head. Workers' inevitability to agree to a lower pay would be direct outcome of unemployment rate being high. So the rate is high, and workers' inevitability to agree to lower pay is high too, because most likely these people are somewhat constrained and they just look for ways to secure a job. Now, notice something else here. Probability that things will hopefully, and I genuinely mean it, go back to normal post-COVID is going to have the opposite effect on workers' inevitability to agree to a lower pay, right? Because it's another way of saying, hey, if someone is in a situation where they feel maybe sort of desperate and they really just need to grab onto whatever's available, if there is a strong belief and strong hope that things will improve, they will not lower their own bar. They will keep the ground. They will keep this, keep the stakes relatively high. Okay. So this is the relationship that just keep in mind. I'm not discussing yet this transition. I'll get to this just in a second. We talked about likelihood that company will be tempted to look for cheaper workers. Now, there is a dynamic that I personally observed, and it's a pretty frequent one. Depending on who a company is looking, what kind of talent the company is looking for, they may trust third parties to go and procure or not. Like for senior management, for senior echelon, or for people that are somewhere high paid, typically the companies do not go down this route. They either go by referral or they have different type of support companies, or there are executive staffing firms that help with that. So this is slightly off, or just do their own hiring, just do their own, which is in fact the best way to do it, right? You just go and search and seek on your own for best talent. So, but this variable by itself leads to amplifies this. So increasing value of this will lead to increasing value of this. Because when you start looking just for numbers, just to staff people, or sometimes we say, well, you're almost like throwing bodies in there. You go to a body shop. You go to a staffing firm that acts and behaves and operates like a body shop. So this is something that's going to amplify. And on this diagram, there was something else that I would like to stress is this. So workers' inevitability to agree to a low pay. So the immediate perception could be, hey, look, we have a bunch of great people, hopefully they're great people, but they're kind of inevitably put in a position they have to come down on what they expect to be paid. So likelihood that a company gets lucky and comes across a deeply discounted expert, and I mean an expert here, genuinely, a person who is really good at what they do, not a regular priced cheap resource who really needs to work, is hard. So this may increase this, okay? And of course, likelihood that a company will get select a great candidate is also going to be higher, right? But what is not on this diagram, and maybe this is something that we can discuss now, is this a short or is this a long-term solution? Now, one more transition here that I would like to stress is this. Probability that things will go back to normal post-COVID will increase this variable. So if this goes up, this goes up. Risk of low loyalty by workers seeking high pay. So if people have genuine belief that things will get better, they will. So naturally, they will be looking, right? They will be expecting, hey, things will go back to normal and things will change. So here's, so you may ask, from whose perspective is this risk? Who's going to encounter this risk? Well, the argument would be this: it's the risk that is most likely going to be uptaken by a company that bets on this situation, right? Okay. So what else? What else did we not talk about this here? Workers' inability to So yeah, so this is actually another transition that may be more direct. Workers' inevitability to agree to lower pay, you may argue this is by itself, it will increase risk of low loyalty by workers. So a worker that considers and agrees to take to take a job, or to take a role that clearly pays less than this person expects to get paid, um, he or she will inevitably have this itchy trigger finger to always look for another opportunity. So the degree of comfort and satisfaction at the entry is pretty low at entry point already. Okay. So I'm gonna pause now, and I really would like this. We don't have that many people on the call, so I would like this to be an open conversation. But one more thing I wanted to kind of stress and maybe slightly anchor you in your thinking. My argument is this. So this entire system is somewhere a broken equilibrium, just because of there's so many unknowns and so many things that that are hard to predict, so many things that are not traditional. The equilibrium is not there. We don't know, so we can make arguments about short versus long-term dynamics. Maybe it's a good idea to, from a standpoint of a company, to jump on the, cheap resource as opposed to higher cost, higher quality talent, and just, get the job done. Maybe it's a very short job. Maybe it's really, there is no need to worry about knowledge transfer or loss of this intellectual asset in 3-4 months. So there's a short-term versus long-term dynamic. I guess there's an element of inevitability and hardship for all people that are seeking jobs. There are also opportunity for all people that are seeking jobs because, sky's the limit, right? So anyone from one side of the globe can almost easily pretend, well, if time zone isn't, and it's actually is a factor, but you can probably argue that if it's like 2-3 hours difference and you're okay to deal with the 2-3 hours difference of time zoning, you can pretty much apply for a job that you would never apply otherwise because you are so far away. Uncertainty and risks for companies. There are great opportunities as well. Like we mentioned here, sky's the limit. You just go out and hire anyone you want. But you also are betting on something that may not prevail in 3-4 months. Because if you are, bringing someone in on clearly unfavorable for that person's conditions, you immediately invest in a toxic asset. It's a shaky, wobbly ground. So, and obviously hardships and opportunities for consulting and staffing firms, you may argue as well. With this, this is a situation right here. If XYZ company is looking to staff with lots of cheap talent just because they feel that's the way to go, and they don't have enough time and energy to spend on their own internal, they'll just outsource the whole thing. So it's probably good for this hypothetical company. But the flip side is true too, because of the overall market conditions are, because of the current COVID situation. Again, we are kind of discussing this in the scope of the current situation. Because of there was a market constraint and some market challenges, already challenging situation will be even challenged further. So these staffing firms and staffing agencies might be getting the short end of the stick because they're almost hunting and they're chasing same exact candidates. So there's so many different dynamics, and so there's really no perfect solution, or there is no conclusive evidence of anything. We don't have any raw data to support, like statistics. I mean, I don't have any statistics, only observations and some are speculations. But I would like this to be more of a conversation. So feel free to jump in. I mean, depending on what you do, where you're from, and what your experiences are, maybe this would be useful to others. Okay, so now it's the time to unmute and speak up if you would like.
So that's a really great diagram there, Gene. I would also modify your top variable where it says company's internal capability to look for talent. I'd also add to that the company's culture to have seats in a chair, and what's their culture towards, remote work and things like that, because that's definitely going to impact that limitation to local markets. Only, some places want to have people in the offices or in the local area. I know here in Nashville, that's a big issue. They tend to want to see people in this region and not from, working from 2 or 3 time zones away.
So Charles, you're suggesting, and this is exactly what we typically do with a causal diagram, and exactly what we do in less training and other system modeling exercises. You tell me how you think this should be changed, the variable. So instead of company's internal capability to look for talent, how would you frame this so that the rest, or maybe the whole relationship should be changed, the whole downstream, but how would you change this one?
I would just change it to say company's internal capability and culture to look for talent.
And culture, yeah, okay, I agree. See if I can.
Or mindset, if that's shorter.
There's some delay in typing. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So, culturally, some companies might be just used to. That's the way we do business here. We don't bother procuring. We don't bother spending our own time understanding what these people are. We outsource the whole process. We just step in at the very tail end of it. That could be a very cultural thing. Anyone else?
I think I've seen that quite a bit with my company, in fact, which in the New York City area has got a very strong, from the owner on down, mindset of co-location being critical. And certainly, that can't continue at this time, which has led to a scattering of the engineering staff, which has been very interesting as folks have gone back to their historical homes that they may have immigrated to New York City for, looking for lower cost of living or just to be closer to family during these times, trying to regather folks, and with the expectation on the difficulty for that is a huge part that has been shaping our hiring practices. We've seen many kind of, as per your model, Gene, great hires that have been remote. It's been interesting to see the expectation that those workers will remain remote or will move to New York City when this all kind of starts to clear up. As to kind of the external factors that might be useful in this model, we tend to look at a lot of the other tech companies that might be our competitors, such as Facebook or Google, and what their public statements are on their return to office to drive our choices. Where I'd put that in your model, I'm not quite sure, but I think those external factors are very useful at setting expectations.
It would tremendously help, Clay. Thank you. And this is so I'm taking yours. I'm taking Charles, but on the fly would be kind of difficult to change the model, the diagram. If you don't mind, just chime in the window some of the additional variables that you and others would like to consider to either expand or amplify this diagram. So what I'll do, obviously this is going to be a resource, and I'm going to put it up on my site. You can download it and then play with your own variables and the variables of other people. So whatever you think, create this entry, and I'll copy paste it and make it available. Say, hey, this is something else that came from the audience, some additional variables. Please make sure you use them. If that makes sense, Clay. If you just chime in the window, and I'll do the homework too.
Let me see if I can try to concretely get some of those examples too, just to help out.
Yeah, you can actually, if you type it in the chat window, and I'll just scoop them from there. I'll do the homework, if that's okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is good. This is exactly what we would like to see in a causal loop diagram, in a system modeling discussion. People come in with some ideas. Some of this may not be true for certain companies or for certain areas. So this is all very argumentative. Hey, can I put anyone else wants to chime in, folks? This is exactly what the intention is to engage you. some recent experiences. Maybe you've been through an interview process, or you know, I don't want to put anyone on the spot. Maybe people have some. Who has any strong views or any views at all about what we see here?
I'd like to share some thoughts.
Please.
The constraints included. I know the diagram is already pretty full, and I know the initial intent was modeling the system from the perspective of companies wanting to hire people. But just for the sake of the argument, I'd like to share some thoughts about when you look at it from the perspective of people who are going to look at a job. Not all of them, not all the segments of these people who are right now free are ready to invest and commit to a new mission unless they're freelance and it's short term and something and they really have to take the money. Some of them are going to be happy waiting it out and collecting benefits on a 1, 2, 3 months basis, and they will see things coming. Maybe they will get busy with other stuff like investing in their education or looking after their real estate investments, whatever. My segmentation definition is not that fine-grained, but I'm seeing some behaviors of that kind where people are not going to be ready to commit to a company, especially not long-term, if they think they're going to get a bad deal. So, and I could assume, I have no arguments for that, but I could assume that these people are the ones that are very confident that they could have a good job or mission or project anytime they want. Anytime they want with some waiting time, but of course they can get it. So they're not so much in a hurry. And companies are going to miss on these people unless they make them a really good offer.
Mauro, this is actually super valuable. I mean, same ask as to for Clay. I instead of me trying to transcribe what you just said, if you just don't mind dumping a few thoughts, a few variables into the chat window, I will take them from there. I will copy them from there. So effectively what you just described makes, expose another 2, 3 variables that will impact the way this whole system works. So please. Thank you. Anyone else? Now there's
one thing I'm not seeing in here is anything about regulatory constraints, whether that be as simple as HIPAA. It could also go into financial market security concerns. I mean, even talking today, just looking in the local news about Microsoft buying TikTok, worried about security concerns from China or sourcing overseas in general. Those become all constraints.
Good. That's a good. Actually, I saw on CNN, something about the presidential intent to ban TikTok. Yeah, I didn't read enough, but that could be a very interesting dynamic there. I agree.
Empirically, talked to one lady who is HIPAA constrained in her job. And her employer is interesting. Her and her husband both are HIPAA constrained for different companies, and their work mandate is they must be behind a locked door. Is what they've told their regulators, that all employees are in rooms themselves behind locked doors. Both are working from home, however, now, and have been outsourced from their call centers they previously were located at.
Mm-hmm. So that's. So I'm actually realizing something. We are collecting some of these. We're collecting some of the intel that is super valuable to those that are out there that are not on this call. Like some people, I didn't think about what you were just saying, and this is very expected, right? And you may have different experiences, and you have some knowledge that I don't. So this is actually very. So if we had a unlimited if we had unlimited time, I wish we could just jump on like a mirror board, on a whiteboard, and actually model further. This, my attempt to model this, my model into something much bigger and much more inclusive, including some of the variables. So this is great, Clay and Stephen and Charles and anyone else, guys. Stephanie, do you mind if I ask you, like, put you maybe in a driver's seat for a minute? You may have some experience that could be valuable to everyone. I mean, from a standpoint of quality, I know very little, but if you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah, sure. So I just recently started with a new company based out of New York, remotely. So what we're hearing, so the challenge is onboarding new talent remotely because, first of all, there's a learning component that's not there, trying to, learn a job at home. So that's kind of specific to my role. And then, missing out on that cultural standpoint. So I think what they're looking to do is, they're not really worried about, some of the seasoned professionals, bringing them back into the office. It's all about getting the new hires, make sure they have good learning opportunities, and also trying to, there's a loss of the culture, the dynamic that is important in the day-to-day, that the new hires really aren't getting to experience. And then does that kind of touch on some of what you wanted me to share, Jean? Or like specifically, because I do work from a staffing company.
I mean, yeah, I think this is super. I mean, to me, it's valuable. So I wanted to ask very careful. So like, if you don't want to share some of your secret insight, please don't. But other than that, this is valuable because you're coming from the angle of, you may know things that some of us don't. Like I may not know it.
Yeah, sure. I would say, I mean, it's a bit hard to conceptualize just because I am new. And, like I don't have a lot of business yet, but I would say, like we're seeing a large uptick of the financial services industry still hiring as they move over to cloud computing. And those are a lot of, I would say, more senior roles. We're definitely seeing a lot of senior roles and opportunities to try to fill the positions. And we have decided to expand our candidate pool across the country to pull in, because we do have the ability to do this remotely, right? So we're looking at different recruiting centers to try to pull this talent, because some of the opportunities that we are seeing are very much like niche skill sets that have been hard to find. And I would say also too, like some candidates that have the level of experience that are needed to require these open jobs, that they're not necessarily looking, or, a lot of people aren't really looking to jump into like a temporary contract assignment, even if there's a possibility that they are able to be hired. So yeah, there's a lot of challenges there. So do you have does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you feel that companies, one of the, hypothetical risks that I'm trying to expose here is the yellow type at the top. You get what you pay for, right? We all know this, but also, do you feel that companies are cognizant of this potential concern that if they take advantage of the situation, they may end up with people that will not be there? So they are not getting people that come with, they already come at a lower, with a lowered bar of faith and dedication. So they already come in just because they really have to, and not because so much because they want to. Is this something that you think companies, recognize, or they feel this is, or are they just super happy because the sky's the limit now?
I would say it's definitely a buyer's market, right? So there are certain companies that I've seen that have, open job openings where, the recruiters have been tasked with like letting them know, like, this company is not going to go above the rate that you were making before. If you're trying to negotiate high, they're going to move on. But then I've also seen other companies like within the financial industry that are willing to pay rate exceptions just because they are looking for like niche skill sets. So they are willing to pay or go, you know, above what they have budgeted for. And also too, you know, I'm still pretty new, so I'm still working this all out, being 2 months into this whole thing.
Yeah, I definitely, I do certainly do appreciate you chiming in, right? I mean,
No problem.
sorry for this that your view is very valuable here too. And I think I hear loud and clear. So the companies that are looking for niche skill or someone who is with a unique specialty expertise, they're not going to drive down
No,
others and
no,
candidates.
because they're not able to do that.
That's good. That's good. That's a good
At
information.
least from what I don't think so. But I mean, obviously, that's, you know, I'm looking at just a small New York City market, and I'm sure that it is happening. It could be happening.
Cool. Thank you. Hey, guys, anyone else? This turned out to be much more engaging than I thought. Anyone? I see Alexa's on mute. He's got a yellow, yellow perimeter around her. Anyone?
What Stephanie was saying about the market and people that are in niche positions, I know here in Nashville, there's been a big push for, you know, a lot of DevOps people, DevOps architects, and things like that. And, you know, there's just not many of those people available, and so they're not going to move just for a low salary position just to, you know, because they're in very high demand at a lot of organizations. So supply and demand, they're going to keep it at the same price.
Yeah, so I think if I'm hearing you correctly, Charles, and I think that's my personal sentiment as well. So you may, so for whatever it's worth, in the situation that we're in has opened up like the whole new horizon, and so the irony is this: why did we have to wait for this to happen in order to think more holistically, more global? I mean, I guess my only very strong argument would be this: if companies do see value in bringing in remote, high quality talent from elsewhere, then why, we didn't have to wait until we didn't have to wait for COVID to strike. We could have acted much sooner, but out of very good intention. But I guess, Charles, what I'm hearing also, you're saying this is like in Nashville, Tennessee. If you have scarcity of talent, if you really cannot find anyone locally, you would have to go elsewhere anyway. But
Yeah.
what would you do if it wasn't for COVID? I mean, do you think the companies would force people to relocate, or would they allow to?
Well, I think that's where, you know, my statement earlier about, you know, the culture inside of a company, because, you know, here in Nashville, it goes back to one of Newton's laws that an object in motion tends to stay in motion and an object at rest tends to stay at rest. You know, that the mindset here in Nashville was that, okay, you know, we don't really need to change, you know, to embrace remote workers because we've got a lot of talent here. But then when COVID hit and you had to abandon the office spaces and everything else, then they had to ramp up extremely quickly to do work from home, remote, telecommuting. But the technology was there, but the mindset was still there. You still had executives wanting to see people in chairs in the offices, and so that has taken a lot longer for them to change. We've talked about it for many years down here. You know, some companies were early to embrace it, and some people's weren't, or some companies weren't embracing it, and now this forced the shift.
Sure. Thank you. Again, not to be too much anchored to any specific geography, but I guess for those geographies where real estate is very expensive, like, you know, Tokyo, London, New York City, probability of, and as well as density, human density, population density is very high. There's a high probability that this may become the new norm, right? Because it's now companies just the smell of cost savings on real estate is so seductive, I think, that we may see some, you know, potentially there could be a lot of continuity and almost, you know, point of no return for many companies. So once going remote, most likely they're going to remain remote, at least, especially if their real estate for them has been extremely expensive. Like someone maybe in a cheaper geographic zone may have come back and, you know, full strength back to where people used to be. But in places like New York City, you know, high density, high cost, things could be, you know, different. So, but then there's so much more about those dynamics that we have here in New York City, right? Because so many of these jobs are so much related on human to human, face to face interaction. So we yet to see how that plays out. I saw some pings about some daily rates and stuff. Well, I would just put them as variables and include them in the list. We got about 5 minutes, folks. Any other thoughts? Any additional thoughts on what this whole conversation is about, this system, what's happening. So there's really, you know, you can take it from a standpoint of a buyer or from a standpoint of a seller or from a standpoint of our bystander and watcher.
I think on an unrelated note, I think I didn't know this, let's say, language/syntax. I don't know if it's a formal language, but I think it could be a very useful tool for trying out quickly very simple strategies and playing them out. Not full simulation, but just trying them out on a map. I think if I have the opportunity one day, I'll try this on a post-it board and see if I can work out small strategies or tactics with it. So thanks for introducing this today, Gene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You mean this whole the way of illustrating this?
Yeah, the language you said it's called CDL. So I was only familiar with worldly maps and a lot much more complex strategy modeling notations. And I don't know if this one is a formal language, but I'm gonna research it and see what's behind it.
You know what? Let me help you out. So actually, this causal diagram. You're right. It's a pretty lean, pretty easy to use tool. I can actually get you some additional artifacts and references for something like this and show you, and point you to some more authentic sources. Yes, and this is, of course, none of this is a conclusive best practice. This is exactly how things should look. But this is an amazing way, at least in my experience, to expose the system, to expand it. Like I wish we had like another 5 hours to actually take some of the variables and plug them in the system and see what falls out, what shouldn't be there, etc. So
yeah, totally. I come from a research background and also formal modeling, model-driven engineering, and model transformations, and all the hardcore stuff. And I spent many years in consulting, and I've always been thinking that we could easily save 3, 4, 5 days of talking over each other's heads if we only had one syntax to just put things on a board and speak the same language. But you know, it's one of the things. So
excellent.
Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, this was a working session. I think if I were to qualify this whole session, it wasn't a presentation, it was a working session. I really appreciate you chiming in and contributing to this. And again, it's a hint, this is the meat and potatoes. This is the heart and soul of large scale Scrum teaching. I don't call it a framework for now, call it teaching, because that's what we do. We expand, we expose, and we design the system. Once we see it, it's hard to unsee. That's the thing of, once we own this understanding, we cannot give it up. I will do the following. I will make this into PDF. The video hopefully will record as well, and I'll make it available. Share it with your colleagues. I'm gonna take all of the variables you have entered in the chat window, and I will make just an addendum to it. So you can take this and you can continue playing on your own. And if you have some great ideas, please, we can figure out how to contribute, make you contribute to further expansion of this diagram. Okay. I'm going to, I guess, thank you all for joining. We're on the hour. I know you have other things to do. And without any further ado, I'm going to wish you a great week. We got some events coming up. So I'll just communicate this ad, but just look on the calendar. There's some other less event, not just less events in the large scale Scrum community. There's some great events coming up. Some good people coming up to speak. Okay. Thank you all for contributing.
Bye.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
My pleasure.